Put your doubts to the side, get his ass in the bed. Even if it's whack, you can still get some head. Go for it, go for it, go. Ho for it, ho for it, ho. Do you want that dick or no? You better go for it, ho.
On July 27th, 2025, Tulsa police responded to a shooting outside an after-hours nightclub on North Yale Avenue. The incident occurred around 2:30 a.m. following a fight that began inside the club and continued into the parking lot. Witnesses later described the conflict as connected to a personal relationship dispute. Among those present was 23-year-old Jashari Jackson, a single mother. During the altercation, she attempted to intervene as tensions escalated. Surveillance video later confirmed that Jackson stepped forward to calm the dispute. During the confrontation, Jada McGrew, age 18, walked to a vehicle, retrieved a firearm, and returned to the scene. McGrew then fired multiple shots. Jackson was struck and died at the scene. A second victim, 26-year-old DeAndre Johnson, was also shot and transported to a hospital for treatment. Tulsa police secured the area, collected shell casings, and reviewed surveillance footage. Detectives interviewed multiple witnesses and reconstructed the sequence of events. Investigators determined the shooting was not random but targeted. Within hours, McGrew was identified as the primary suspect. She was arrested at an apartment complex in East Tulsa and charged with first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon. A second suspect, 19-year-old Jeremiah Hernandez, was later arrested and charged as an accessory to first-degree murder for allegedly driving McGrew to and from the scene. The case was entered into Tulsa's 2025 homicide records, with Jackson listed as one of 29 homicide victims in the city that year up to that point. Police officials described the shooting as part of a recurring trend of nightlife violence in Tulsa, where disputes tied to relationships frequently escalate into deadly outcomes when firearms are introduced. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Jashari Jackson was born on August 29, 2001 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She lived her entire life in the Tulsa area and was 23 years old at the time of her death in July 2025. Jackson was a single mother, a role that defined much of her personal and daily responsibilities. She carried the weight of raising her child alone, ensuring stability, while balancing her other commitments. This fact made her presence in the community more noticeable, as she had to navigate both the demands of motherhood and the challenges of adulthood at a young age. Jackson was known in her circles as someone who often sought to calm disputes rather than escalate them. This characteristic was not only evident in the circumstances of her death, but also in how she lived her life. Family members and acquaintances described her as someone who maintained close ties with her relatives and was family-centered in her priorities. She was not a person who detached herself from responsibility, but instead someone who actively engaged with others in her environment. When her obituary was published, it highlighted the role she played within her family and the void created by her absence. The documentation of her passing reflected the loss her relatives faced and emphasized the importance of her presence as a daughter, mother, and family member. In her day-to-day routine, Jackson managed the dual responsibilities of parenting and work. She balanced the challenges of providing for her child while also engaging socially. Part of her social network included peers who frequented Tulsa's nightlife environment, a common gathering point for many in their early 20s. This circle connected her to the after-hours club, where the incident eventually unfolded. Her life, while defined by responsibility, also intersected with typical youthful activities, such as social outings, which formed the backdrop to the events leading to her death. The incident took place on July 27, 2025, at approximately 2:30 a.m. The location was an after-hours club situated at 2700 North Yale Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This club served as a late-night gathering spot for individuals after regular establishments had closed. It was during this setting that the sequence of events leading to Jackson's death occurred. Inside and around the club, a fight broke out. According to police reports, The dispute stemmed from a lover's quarrel. Individuals with intertwined romantic histories became engaged in a heated argument that developed into physical altercations. Multiple participants were involved, and the disturbance quickly drew attention from others at the scene. A crowd formed, intensifying the atmosphere and drawing in bystanders. Amid the chaos, Jashari Jackson stepped in. She was not directly part of the quarrel, but attempted to act as a mediator to de-escalate tensions. Witnesses later confirmed that she did not arrive to fight or take sides. Instead, she attempted to calm the situation and prevent further escalation. Jackson was unarmed and in a vulnerable position, trying to intervene between individuals who were already emotionally charged. Her role in this conflict was that of a peacemaker, a description later confirmed by both police and witnesses. During the escalation, 18-year-old Jada McGrew became central to the violence. Reports indicate that McGrew left the area of the fight, went to a vehicle, and retrieved a firearm. This action was later captured on surveillance footage, which corroborated eyewitness accounts. McGrew then returned to the confrontation area with the weapon in hand. Her actions demonstrated deliberate intent to return armed, rather than a spontaneous firing of shots in the midst of chaos. The decision to retrieve a gun marked a critical turning point that transformed the quarrel into a deadly incident. Once back at the scene, McGrew fired the weapon. Jashari Jackson was struck by the gunfire and killed instantly. Her intervention placed her directly in harm's way, and a fatal shot ended her life before medical assistance could be rendered. A second individual, a 26-year-old, was also hit by the gunfire. This victim survived but required hospitalization. Their condition was stabilized, but their presence on the scene became part of the police investigation into multiple counts of assault and homicide. Witnesses at the scene were clear in their accounts. The shots were not fired randomly into a crowd. Instead, they were targeted actions following McGrew's return with a firearm. The immediate aftermath was marked by panic. The crowd that had gathered dispersed in chaos as gunshots echoed to the parking lot. Police were contacted, and officers arrived at the scene shortly afterward. They secured the area, collected evidence, and began interviewing witnesses. Jashari Jackson was declared dead at the scene. Her body left as evidence in a crime scene that police treated with full homicide procedures. The second victim was transported to the hospital for treatment. Witnesses who had attended the club or were present in the parking lot provided crucial information to investigators. Their accounts confirmed progression of events. An initial fight, Jackson's attempt to intervene, McGrew leaving to retrieve a weapon, and her subsequent return to open fire. These testimonies reinforced the idea that Jackson was not a participant in the fight, but rather someone attempting to prevent further violence. Investigators obtained surveillance footage from the club and nearby cameras. The footage captured McGrew's movements as she left the crowd, approached her vehicle, retrieved the firearm, and returned. This evidence was vital in establishing premeditation rather than impulsive firing. The video footage became a central piece of the case, corroborating eyewitness testimony and strengthening the charges against McGrew. Following the shooting, Captain Richard Muhlenberg of the Tulsa Police Department publicly addressed the media. He stated that the shooting was not a case of random gunfire into a crowd, but instead a targeted action. His statement emphasized the deliberate nature of McGrew's behavior and clarified Jackson's role as a peacemaker caught in the violence. Forensic analysis provided further confirmation. The autopsy conducted on Jashari Jackson confirmed a fatal gunshot wound as the cause of death. Ballistic testing traced a bullet recovered from the scene directly to the firearm associated with McGrew. This evidence aligned with both witness accounts and surveillance footage, closing the gaps in the investigation. On July 27, 2025, Tulsa police officers responded to reports of gunfire outside an after-hours nightclub located on North Yale Avenue. The investigation that followed centered on the death of 23-year-old Jashari Jackson, who was attempting to calm a fight before she was fatally shot. The shooter was later identified as 18-year-old Jada McGrew. Law enforcement evidence, including eyewitness accounts and surveillance video, allowed authorities to piece together the sequence of events and pursue charges. The legal process that followed involved multiple suspects, layered charges, and continuing proceedings in Tulsa County District Court. Law enforcement officers quickly identified Jada McGrew as the shooter. Witness testimony confirmed that McGrew had left the altercation, gone to a vehicle, retrieved a firearm, and returned to the scene where she discharged the weapon. Tulsa police arrested her at an apartment complex in East Tulsa within hours of the shooting. Authorities charged McGrew with first-degree murder, which in Oklahoma requires proof of deliberate intent and premeditation to kill. Prosecutors also filed an additional count of assault with a deadly weapon related to the second victim, who sustained injuries but survived. The dual charges were structured to address both the fatality and the injury caused by the gunfire. At the time of her arrest, investigators indicated that McGrew was cooperative but provided limited information on motive beyond the interpersonal conflict that had preceded the shooting. The charges reflected the evidence captured on surveillance cameras and corroborated by multiple eyewitnesses. During the course of the investigation, officers uncovered evidence suggesting a second individual had played a role. 19-year-old Jashari Hernandez was identified as the driver who transported McGrew to and from the nightclub and allegedly helped conceal or dispose of a firearm following the incident. Police arrested Hernandez later that week. Prosecutors charged him with accessory to first-degree murder, a felony under Oklahoma law. The accessory charge required the state to demonstrate that Hernandez knowingly aided McGrew either before or after the commission of the crime. Court records indicated that investigators traced communications between Hernandez and McGrew, as well as reviewed vehicle surveillance footage, to establish his connection to the incident. The inclusion of Hernandez expanded the scope of the case from a single shooter to a cooperative act involving at least two individuals. The official case documents filed in Tulsa County included affidavits prepared by detectives summarizing interviews with eyewitnesses, including individuals inside and outside the club at the time of the shooting, probable cause statements outlining how the sequence of events constituted deliberate action rather than reckless or accidental gunfire, surveillance footage from the club parking lot, clearly showing McGrew retrieving the firearm from a vehicle before returning to discharge it. Forensic reports on ballistic evidence confirming that bullets recovered matched the weapon later linked to McGrew. Medical examiners report documenting the fatal gunshot wound sustained by Jackson. These documents collectively supported the charges brought against both McGrew and Hernandez and formed the foundation of the case as it advanced into court proceedings. The legal process began with McGrew's initial arraignment, where the charges of first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon were formally read. She entered a not guilty plea, and the court scheduled preliminary hearings. Hernandez underwent a similar process, facing the accessory to murder charge. Following arraignment, bail hearings were held. Given the severity of the charges, prosecutors argued against release, citing risk to public safety and potential flight. Judges considered the arguments before setting conditions. Both suspects remained in custody at the Tulsa County Jail pending trial. The court then moved into pretrial motions, including requests by the defense to suppress certain evidence, particularly surveillance footage and witness testimony, on grounds of admissibility. The prosecution filed motions to admit ballistic and forensic evidence, citing chain of custody and expert verification. The prosecution strategy has been consistent: to frame the shooting as a deliberate act. By presenting the sequence of McGrew leaving the fight, retrieving the weapon, and returning to fire, prosecutors argue the crime meets a standard for first-degree murder. This requires establishing intent and premeditation, both of which they claim are supported by surveillance evidence and eyewitness accounts. The defense strategy has indicated two possible directions. First, to argue that the incident was a heat of passion response to a volatile confrontation, which might reduce the charge to second-degree murder or manslaughter. Second, to suggest emotional provocation from the fight itself, portraying McGrew's actions as impulsive rather than premeditated. For Hernandez, the defense is expected to argue that his role as driver did not equate to knowing participation in the crime, challenging the accessory charge. Both sides will rely heavily on interpretations of intent, timing, and motive as the trial progresses. The potential outcomes in this case vary. Guilty verdict. If convicted of first-degree murder, McGrew faces life imprisonment without the possibility of parole under Oklahoma law. A conviction for assault with a deadly weapon carries additional prison time. Accessory conviction. Hernandez could face a lengthy sentence if found guilty of knowingly aiding McGrew. Plea bargains. Either defendant may attempt to negotiate plea deals, reducing charges in exchange for guilty pleas. McGrew could plead to second-degree murder or manslaughter, while Hernandez could seek a reduced charge, such as obstruction or aiding and abetting. The final determination rests on how the evidence is presented and interpreted in court. Following Jackson's death, her family released a formal obituary recognizing her as a young mother and highlighting her efforts to de-escalate the conflict that ended her life. The family publicly acknowledged her role as a peacemaker, emphasizing that she was not involved in the dispute that led to the shooting. Family members participated in community gatherings and provided statements to local media, consistently requesting justice and accountability in the court process. Law enforcement officials, including Tulsa Police Captain Richard Muhlenberg, confirmed to the press that Jackson was attempting to stop the altercation when she was fatally shot. This public acknowledgement reinforced a narrative that she was an unintended victim and not part of the initial conflict. Community groups organized vigils and memorials across Tulsa in the days following her death. These gatherings serve both as remembrance and as calls for stronger measures to prevent similar incidents in nightlife venues. Jackson's death left behind a young child. The immediate impact involved determining custody arrangements through surviving family members. Support systems were coordinated among relatives to ensure the child's care and stability. This aspect of the case underscored the long-term effects of the shooting beyond the immediate legal consequences. The loss of parental support and guidance for the child remains one of the significant outcomes of the incident. By mid-2025, Tulsa law enforcement had recorded 29 homicide cases within the city limits. These cases spanned a wide range of circumstances: domestic disputes, armed robberies, drug-related incidents, and interpersonal conflicts that escalated into lethal encounters. The murder of Jashari Jackson on July 27, 2025, was one of these cases and was classified by police as a targeted homicide rather than random gunfire. Statistics from the Tulsa Police Department and crime databases reflected a troubling pattern: a consistent presence of gun-related deaths connected to nightlife, domestic disagreements, and social disputes. The shooting that took Jackson's life occurred outside an after-hours nightclub, a venue type that has repeatedly appeared in homicide investigations across Tulsa in recent years. These data points demonstrate how nightlife establishments remain recurring backdrops for violent crimes. Police incident reports highlight contributing factors, such as high volumes of intoxicated individuals, lack of regulated security at after-hours venues, and the presence of firearms in disputes that might otherwise remain verbal or physical fights. Jackson's death is thus not viewed in isolation, but as part of a broader cycle of violence that continues to challenge Tulsa's public safety efforts in 2025. Nightlife in Tulsa, particularly in late-night or after-hours settings, has been linked to repeated criminal incidents. From 2020 through 2025, several homicides were recorded in or near clubs, lounges, or informal venues operating beyond standard business hours. Police records identify a trend in which disputes escalate when alcohol, crowded environments, and pre-existing relationship conflicts intersect. These environments often lack sufficient surveillance or professional security personnel capable of de-escalating volatile situations. The Jackson case aligns with this trend. According to investigative reports, the shooter, Jada McGrew, retrieved a weapon from a car and returned to the scene with the firearm. The act was deliberate in the setting. An after-hours club lot provided an unregulated environment where the conflict could unfold without immediate containment. Nightlife-related violence continues to account for a measurable percentage of Tulsa's homicide numbers. Jackson's case illustrates the dangers of disputes spilling outside entertainment venues, where intervention from police is often reactive rather than preventative. A recurring factor in Tulsa's homicides has been relationship-driven conflicts. Cases often involve disputes between romantic partners, jealousy, or conflicts tied to loyalty and betrayal. Police reports show that these arguments, when occurring in public and crowded environments, are more likely to escalate quickly due to social pressure, perceived disrespect, or the presence of onlookers. The Jackson case was officially categorized as a lover's quarrel turned deadly. Witness accounts and police statements confirm that the altercation began as a relationship dispute and then escalated. The pattern observed here is not unique. Multiple past homicides in Tulsa have followed similar trajectories, with interpersonal drama transforming into violent outcomes once firearms were introduced. Gun access during nightlife conflicts is another recurring theme. Many suspects involved in nightlife shootings in Tulsa were able to retrieve weapons from vehicles parked nearby. This easy access enables rapid escalation. An argument that might otherwise end in fists or shouting instead becomes a homicide. In the Jackson case, McGrew walked to a car, retrieved a gun, and returned to fire. Surveillance footage validated the sequence. This pattern underscores the relationship between firearm availability and homicide frequency in nightlife disputes. Without firearms, these incidents might result in injuries, but with guns, they more often result in fatalities. The Jackson case highlights several points of vulnerability and potential preventive measures. Community programs focusing on conflict resolution and relationship management may help reduce the likelihood of disputes escalating to public fights. Training individuals in recognizing and de-escalating heated arguments before they spill into violence has been suggested in prior crime prevention studies. After-hours clubs often operate with minimal or unregulated security standards compared to licensed establishments. Requirements for surveillance cameras, trained security personnel, and crowd control could reduce the likelihood of unchecked disputes. Metal detectors or bag checks could further limit the introduction of firearms into nightlife venues. Firearm accessibility in vehicles is a recurring factor in similar cases. Regulations surrounding how firearms may be stored near nightlife venues could reduce immediate access. Routine police patrols in nightlife districts may deter individuals from retrieving weapons during disputes. The Tulsa Police Department has acknowledged in multiple briefings that repeated shootings outside nightlife locations require a multi-layered prevention strategy. Jackson's case underscores this need. Following the investigation, Jada McGrew was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon. She was detained shortly after the incident at an apartment complex in East Tulsa. A second suspect, 19-year-old Jeremiah Hernandez, was also arrested and charged as an accessory to first-degree murder. He was identified as a driver who transported McGrew to and from the crime scene and allegedly assisted in disposing of the weapon. At the time of reporting, the trial process was ongoing. Pre-trial hearings established the charges, with prosecutors framing the crime as deliberate and targeted. Defense strategies have yet to be fully outlined but may include arguments of provocation or lack of premeditation. The outcome of the trial remains to be determined. However, if convicted on first-degree murder charges, McGrew faces the possibility of life imprisonment. Hernandez, if convicted as an accessory, faces significant sentencing no less than the primary shooter. The justice process will ultimately decide the accountability measures for both suspects. Tulsa's courts historically treat first-degree murder convictions with severe sentencing, typically resulting in life imprisonment without parole or long-term incarceration. This accountability process serves two functions: punishing the perpetrators and serving as a deterrent in similar disputes. However, data indicates that deterrence alone is insufficient without broader preventive strategies in nightlife safety and firearm regulation. Jashari Jackson's death has been documented as an example of a peacemaker victimized while attempting to stop violence. Official statements from Tulsa police emphasize that she was not involved in the conflict itself, but stepped in to intervene. Her story is being cited in local media and community discussions as a cautionary lesson about the dangers of nightlife disputes escalating in the presence of firearms. The fact that a bystander attempting to calm tension became the casualty reinforces the argument for stronger prevention policies. The Jackson case closes with several established facts. She was one of 29 homicide victims in Tulsa up to July 2025. The shooting followed a recognizable pattern of nightlife violence tied to relationship disputes. Gun access in nightlife settings enabled a fatal escalation. Preventive measures remain necessary. Conflict mediation, improved club security, and firearm enforcement. Jackson was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was acting in the role of a mediator. Her actions positioned her directly in the center of the dispute, but her intent was to prevent violence, not participate in it. The result was the opposite of what she sought. Her life was taken. The community was left with another scar, another homicide statistic, and another reminder of the urgent need for systemic changes. Justice for Jackson is still moving through the courts, but her case already stands as a marker in Tulsa's 2025 homicide record and as a cautionary account of the risks inherent in nightlife conflicts. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.